All right, welcome back to Daybreak Africa. You're still watching Daybreak Africa. It's time now for the interview segment, and our guest is on standby to talk about the reflection on child development amidst diversity. Because, as you know, diversity can come in terms of culture, in terms of religion, and also gender. And so, our guest is here. She is Temitope Olagunju, and she is an educationist. Welcome to Daybreak Africa.
Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
It's a
pleasure. Good morning.
All right, so let's begin with what diversity really is, because, like we said, people can have different opinions about it. Rachael can have a different definition. I can also have. So let's hear what you have to say about diversity.
Basically, diversity is about the differences that we have inherent with us, be it culture, religion, how we speak, how we look. So the variety is just what diversity is all about.
Okay, now let's move on to how diversity affects the upbringing of a child, especially in a nation like Nigeria, that is one of the most diverse nations in the world. And we have different cultures, different traditions, different religions, and we come together to mix. And then we have different factors that may influence what kind of diversity a child would experience. Now tell us, how do you think diversity affects the upbringing of a child?
Okay, thank you very much. To start with, when we have a quick reflection of how we really grew up, what did we see, what did we experience? So that helps us to take us back to how do we want the children going forward, what we want their experiences should be like. And for the children of these days, not these days, it's children over the years, they learn more by what they see and imitate it. So when we're in our environment, it's about us being intentional with what we present to children, be it physically, online, on media, or how do we help them to interpret what they see, because children are very good in asking questions. So when we come up with different questions, we should be intentional to know that every response or reaction we give to certain situation helps to form their learning, help to form their personality. So it's about being intentional about what a child sees or imitates.
That's deep. That's okay like that. All right, so now what is diversity in child development? We've talked about how it affects child development, but what is it like? Okay, now I don't understand. What is diversity in child development? Explain to me like a layman now.
In the early stage of A, B, C, D,
it's
about for them to understand and embrace, because they cannot really embrace what they don't even understand. So it's about, like I said, I've used the word being intentional about it. And at the point when someone is a child, one should present, give them opportunities to see things. For me, I would, it's not as in schooling outside is learning and child development is not just the school, so we don't leave everything to the school. Even as parents, caregivers, the community, we have to be intentional to know that when there are children around us especially, we don't have unnecessary conflicts, and we make them feel that, oh, I'm fighting this person because we have ethnical differences, or we have religious differences. They are seeing it, they are watching it, they are interpreting it. Even with the recent political election we had, over time we were not conscious enough to not let the children imbibe the fact that it was a religious election or diversity, and they're asking questions. They want to understand why. So we have to be intentional so that going forward, because we were once children, I was a child.
Yes, we were all children at some point.
So whosoever we are now, whatever you believe right now, and why it's really taking time for you to separate yourself from what you believe is because you didn't believe those things now. They were like pillars and layers and foundations. So for me, child development and education is about layers and information, experiences, our exposure, our imitations, what we see, how we react to it, and how we sometimes it's quite intentional, unintentional, or unconscious when we get this information. Just like when you're listening to a song and you don't really like the song, after a while you realize they're singing the song.
Registers in your subconscious.
So yes, unconsciously children pick habits and react to you differently because of the environment. So yeah, I think it's more of an environmental thing.
Now, while we were, like we said, we were all children one time like that. Okay, now we've had issues of ethnic, should I say ethnicity violence now, that some people from other religions have to kill other people from other religions because of something. Now I don't really want to go into details, like okay, probably because of what did it like, okay, they said this person is making mockery of blasphemy, so they kill this sort of people. And of course it's been going on for a while. Probably it's what they saw their parents do, or the society, what they have seen them do, and then so they just take it up upon themselves to just continue like that. Now, do you think that, like you are an educationist, do you think that this can be taught in school apart from parents doing their own? Because even like you said, there are some parents that are even contributory factors to ethnic issues and all of that. Do you think it can be imbibed in these children in school and they can take to it?
Yeah, schools are doing a whole lot, and there's always room for improvement, where you have the cultural day and different children have to exhibit their ethnical dress, dance and all that. Yes. And you know, narrowing diversity is not just about culture or your language. Yes. It's sometimes even about your mental abilities or your learning differences. Diversity is quite wide. So in terms of how teachers teach, they have to be intentional. When you're giving examples, you know, even if you're teaching English, you can give examples of your composition to talk about a story that infuses diversity, not necessarily when you have a subject base. It can be blended into the teaching style, or probably even if it is maths, you can add the fact that someone from this village, now from that village, they have a land and how they cooperated. So indirectly, you're telling the student about cooperation, even in your maths. So I'm using those subjects intentionally because when we talk about diversity, we want to think of, oh, in history you have to teach that, and civic you have to teach that. Even in English you can teach that. Even about biology, you can intentionally make the student realize that everybody, we have eyes, we have nose, irrespective of our ethnic
Let's go back to the parents now. I grew up in a multicultural family where my dad is from Delta and my mom is a Yoruba woman. And then there was a point in my family that I realized that, okay, there was issue about greetings. Not like there was a big issue, but you know, when the mom is Yoruba and the mom in Yoruba land, you have to go on both knees as a lady to greet. And then the dad is from Delta State, where they just like
you don't have to.
You don't have to. It's not compulsory. It does not matter. And then mom is saying, "Oh, you have to kneel down to greet your dad," and dad is saying, "No, you have to." Now, this kind of I'm making this example because these kind of things bring confusion to children, and because that's just a minute issue, or it wasn't much of a problem. Now imagine if it was something more sensitive, something more serious. There was a particular war that happened in Yoruba land. They call it the Ijaife and the Modakeke, where they had this clash, and couples who had intermarriage, if a man who has married a Modakeke woman started killing each other, disowning their children, murdering their children, just because there is intercultural crisis. Now, I know that there may be just very little that a child can do. But before we talk about the child, let's talk about the parents now. Most parents do not pay attention to this cultural diversity. They cannot even protect themselves as adults from the effects of cultural diversity. But then for the children, it could cause some form of confusion. As a parent, if I were to be a parent and I have a child and I'm married to someone who does not even come from my culture or probably from my religion, because you have people like that who are married to a person from a different religion. How do you manage information between you and your spouse and the child? How do you make sure that the child is receiving the right amount and equal information from both partners?
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, the issues will keep coming up daily. So we have to be intentional parents. And why I use the word intentional parents? Because you can't even give what you don't have. Your parents did not teach about diversity or inclusion or how to manage crisis. So how do you want to teach your children when you don't even know that it occurs? So now that we know that there are crises, parents just have to take it upon them. So when I say parents, I mean you and I, irrespective of having a child or not, to know that we have to continue having this conversation. Maybe by reading stories, by visiting orphanage homes, to just let them understand. Even when you're in your car with your AC on, let them understand that. Let them have such a kind of reflection of what it is. Even in your home, be intentional about asking open-ended questions. Don't assume your children know something in a certain way. It's one thing to know it, for them to know it in a certain way. They ask questions, and they even give room to ask questions. Because I can't really say as an educationist, teach the children A, B, C, D. Teach them from where they know. Take it from what they know.
From scratch.
Yes, from what, I even understand what they know. Why do they know it? Where did they even get that information? I have some kids that they believe that some people in a kind of law enforcement agency, as far as they are concerned, they don't want to see them because they feel they will arrest children for sin. And it's because of an experience they had. So children have experiences that they've imbibed when we're there, when we're not there. So as parents, we have to intentionally have conversation with children. Even it doesn't have to be dedicating the whole day. Sometimes when you're just cooking, you're washing, wash with them, cook with them. This is your bedtime stories that we feel within probably the African culture. We didn't really take note of that. I feel it's a culture that we have to bring back in the Nigerian context. So have bedtime stories. It doesn't have to be a ready-made book. We have lots of story books by great Nigerian authors. But even you as parents, you have to be very innovative in the way you get information about your children. They are going to have peer, and lots of peer pressures are happening. So basically, have information, understand what your children know, and be intentional about not ignoring it. You have a fight with someone, and you feel you don't owe your children explanation to tell them why you had that conflict. Please, you do, so that they will not interpret why you had that conflict, and if possible, avoid conflict when your children are there. We have parents that seemingly look as if they don't fight, but they do. But they don't. The children, see what you hear.
Yes. I grew up like that in my family up until I got into the university. I'm the last child. I think it was when I got into the university and got to like my 400 level. That's when I knew that they used to fight. It's
not possible. Of course they will.
But you can't really.
But the way they will, because there are some parents that you see them cursing each other, shouting at the top of their voices and all that, and then
the children,
even the children and all of that.
Some parents, I remember there was a neighbor, so to speak, I think the third house from us back then, and the mother would be like, go and meet your Yoruba father. It is the people in your father's house that they are mad. It is this because your father is a Yoruba man, that's why you are dirty. It's because your mother is Igbo, and then they just lash out at each other, and then those children grow up with that mindset. Now, on that, the truth is that the Nigeria of today, we will still have, I still believe that in the next 30-50 years, we will still have parents who would not consider diversity when bringing up their children, or consider diversity when it comes to the development of their children. Now, what do we do about such parents? Say, maybe at work or at church or on the streets, I have them around me. What can I do to does it make the difference?
You know, it also happens in churches.
Yes,
now.
it does.
It also happens, but I think I saw a tweet of recent that pastors are now kind of making this cultural diversity, making it more obvious. It happened during this political period and all of that. We have pastors that say they cannot
particular candidates because it's from their ethnicity. So how do you now, as a parent, because no matter how much we want to talk about it for children, the parents are still the major players until that child becomes an adult and decides what he or she wants to do with his life. How do I manage such parents around me?
Okay, I'll start by mentioning the fact that as a NASO member, we have lots of issues around this parenting and lots of cases. There has to be domestic violence in terms of low self-esteem, and it still boils down to the issue of diversity and the fact that even the parents themselves, they need help. The parent, like you said, having to curse their children or curse the father of their children, of course their neighbor, that parent also needs help. The parents needs counseling. Maybe he or she, they need counseling, they need help. Like I said earlier, they can't even give what they don't have.
But do we even have enough, organizations
to even put this parents through,
to orientate them, to teach them,
if they are willing, if they are willing, like Nassau, I'm from Nassau, Lagos, but we have a wider body and a lot of counseling organization and therapists. But you know, with Nigerian content, when you say we go and see a therapist, people feel, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. Do you understand? So that's why sometimes we have this community outreach where we are not saying, oh, you have a problem. It might come through film show. Sometimes we go with aides so that we can get the attention to talk to them. Because sometimes when you feel a child that is being abused, is because the child found his or herself in a place of vulnerability because of lack of respect or acceptance in their home. So while they search for love or acceptance outside, then they are now vulnerable to violence or abuse. So at the same time, as much as we look into this matter, we believe more in that for prevention. We are here to talk to people, counsel them, give aid, be it family groups, hospitals. Now, as in, social workers are everywhere, really. Because the people are not really asking questions. I have my own, even as a NASU member, I had my own personal experience in the hospital, and I wasn't getting the best medical help. And maybe because my family were NASU, so we knew that we can call the attention of the social worker in that hospital.
There was a time I was looking for a social worker. I wanted to report a family. Yes, there was this family close to my husband's place. Then we were not married, his former apartment. So they lived in the same compound. And this mother and father and children lived with their grandmother. They had their grandmother, and the woman also has like a great-grandchild in that same house. But they beat this woman.
Wow.
Every single one of them.
The
child, the grandchildren and the great-grandchildren, they beat the great-grandmother. And the woman is so old, she's full of age, and I don't know what the woman might have done to that the daughter, who is now a grandmother, but she hates her, but she still accepts her inside the house. And at every single mistake, they beat her. They could throw her a pan or throw her their shoes, even the small ones, the great-grandchildren that are no more than 2, 3, 4. The abusive words.
Do you know what could cause that issue? They might have watched some certain films that depicts that older women are witches. So as far as they are concerned, because someone that has a great-grandchild is definitely looking aged. Do you understand?
She's very full of age. You know, when you're so old, you've shrank.
So then they see attack, evil,
witchcraft.
So that's part of the diversity. I said diversity is not just about, it's about age. People of the younger generation, they don't understand what it means for you to look that age. Why are you looking like this? So you see you as evil. So that has not been addressed. So for them, as a child, you know, like they saw someone doing it, they have to do it. And you don't have to say, go and do this. They feel you're doing it, and they just have to
husband, the grandfather, who is the because the grandparentism, so to speak, is just like, you know, when you have a 16-year-old daughter that's gotten pregnant, that's how they became grandparents. It's not like they are very old. They're very old. The woman is old and she stays with them, and each time they throw, I've witnessed them throw a pan, like a frying pan, throw it at her. You know, when you throw a frying pan at someone who is like maybe 80, you can imagine that the woman would cry, she would weep, they would throw her things and all of that. So that time I was looking for a social worker.
Yeah, I'm happy to know that you wanted to.
Did not.
They are actually there. The phone numbers are there, the emails are there. You know, even at the usual station, you have a human rights desk where you can make your cases known. And they will attend to you. I'm
glad to know this, because a lot of Nigerians don't even know there's a body that you can actually report these kind of issues to. Although the Nigerian in him said I should leave the matter and just...
Of course, so many people would ignore.
Yes, there are a lot of people in that compound. I think the compound has about 8 or 9 families, and everybody knows, but they just look away.
That's why we're here, service to humanity. That humanity that we've lost in us, we have to bring it back.
All right, so now, like you said, you're a NASU member. As a NASU member now, creating an inclusive learning environment and diversity, inclusion environment can be difficult, can be challenging and overwhelming. How can you achieve this?
For me, I would first of all say it's a journey. Because sometimes when we treat issues or we are called to attend to an issue, as much as we do referral, sometimes it's the case of child abuse, we have agencies that we work with. It's the issue of domestic violence, we have issues we work with. So sometimes it's not enough to see these issues from the surface. You can have a child that come report their child and their parents that she's being abused and all that. And by the time you dig deep, you realize that she just wants a certain level of freedom that she's not getting, and she feels they have to be manipulated. So sometimes it's a journey. You have to be with the family. So when we have family intervention, when you hear some stories even online, you are quick to want to judge. Oh, the father, you mean he abandoned the children? Why would he have done that? By the time you now spend time to even investigate, do research, you realize that it's even beyond what you know. You even realize that might even be a third party somewhere. You might even realize that if the father has another family, or it's a root problem, or probably the father impregnated the woman and they didn't accept the pregnancy, and automatically they didn't accept the child. So the child is having self-esteem issue, lack of acceptance here and there. So the issues are really deep. That's why it's not just education. There are lots of therapeutic intervention. And so when you are intervening and you're counseling people and you're hungry, what do? We'll seek for aids and grants again to support them. And the major issue sometimes could be that the woman needs some level of sustenance. So women, when they are going to domestic violence and we have to come in as NASO members with our partner organizations, she needs some level of sustenance. Just as basic as having small grants to have a shop, to sell petty things, and she needs to stand
she won't even need to go back to her abuser.
But why would she want to go back when she's not even sure of feeling for the next day and all that? So and when you keep hearing, I'm doing it because of my child, the basic thing is for the welfare of their child. And it's really very seriously, because it's one thing for you to even give advice to people as regards what you feel is best for them. It's another thing for them to feel no, they want to do otherwise. So it's usually a journey, even for adoption, for placing children in adoption, having to put them in homes. A lot of organizations are involved, the governments are fully involved. So it's a journey really. And if anybody is ready to be on that journey, as social workers, I'm sure you have heart for humanity. Yes, why not?
Okay, before we call it a wrap on this segment, Ololade asked a question earlier on about the possibility of some of these things happening in schools and outside the home. Now, how do you protect your child? Because the reality is that we're not going to get everybody on this page today. So in the meantime, how do I protect my child from children who have been raised under these careless parents, so to speak?
Okay, I'll just say be involved. Be involved as much as possible.
Okay.
For me, ask questions that are relevant and irrelevant. I want to know who is my child's caregiver. I want to know her background. Sometimes I have interaction with the school heads, and sometimes what I'm looking at is something else. I'm just trying to observe my environment. So, and I'll keep going back to being intentional, be it parents, the teachers. You know, that's why sometimes we have trainings for teachers, because even teachers, they need to understand what it means to be social worker at heart. Because by the time they don't even know the traces or symptoms of the fact that a child is going through a mental illness or depression, they won't be able to even help that child. Or if, for example, they don't even know when to report to, because before you get to the parents, probably 30 minutes call away, there should be something you can do as parents. So even for school owners, we also tell them, because as much as I said involvement, I'm at work. But I need to have a school or an environment where to a large extent they respect my child's identity. If, for example, my child has I won't say difficulty or a difference in a particular area, learning differences, they need to know. So that's why some schools, they don't really have to be expensive, but some schools are intentional to understand diversity, to understand differences, to understand social and emotional intelligence, because it's not about teaching a child. How you teach a child is more important. And the basic thing about education is what the child turned out to be. So we are part of their lives, and we have to be intentional about it.
Thank you so much. Our time is fast spent, really. Thank you so much. All right. Do you have any parting word for our viewers out there? So just short before we go.
The basic thing is take me for who I am. It's my eyes, my age, even my height. I always tell people, if you're too taller than me, you're too tall. If you're shorter than me, you're too short. Basically, accept people around you because
the way they are.
at least for the children, because of the children around you.
That would be the take home.
Yeah, accept people around you.
The way they are.
Take me for who I am. Thank you so much
for joining us this morning.
Temitope Olagunju. It was nice having you on the show.
It's a pleasure.
All right, so we've come to the end of the interview now. We'll go on a short break, and when we come back, Daybreak Africa continues. Please stay with us.